No other than Attorney Lerca, Guipe, Valdez.
Okay, so once again, good morning. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity that I was given this time to share my opinion and recommendation to this BTA 286 or our proposed revenue code. Caveat lang po, ma'am sir. I was given a very limited time to review the 286 proposed bill. And I think I only drafted this position paper this morning, like around 3 in the morning. So in passing lang po, so you may notice some, yeah, as we go along, there may be maybe, I think some of the concerns or analysis that I have written here were already addressed by the presentation of Attorney Alauya Sati earlier. So, yun. So, before I go over my analysis and recommendation, I would just like to add about the tourism na narrated Sir Arafat, because me and my family was able to visit some of the provinces located in Guam, and that was 15 years ago. And back then, of course, hindi pa masyadong developed areas, but the natural resources, particularly the water resources, very rich, very rich. And there was one time I have my college schoolmate who even asked me, gusto ka crabs? Because we are in Cotabato City, and yung crabs daw, malaki, ganyan. However,
Masarap pa yung crabs namin.
I'm sorry, pero we're Sabbath keepers, so we have a very strict food restriction. So, sir, wala pa po nakatilag baboy. Never in our lives na nakatilag. Yes, Church of God Seventh Day. So we have a very strict food restriction. So if you want, it's bawal seafood or anything. So very strict sa food. Bawal. So at the time, siguro bawal ni, pero I appreciate the thought na very rich ang bar. And we were also able to stay overnight sa Cotabato City, pass through Para. Very good ang mga beaches. So, and even in Parao City, Lanao, very nice. So, it would be best if we will somehow strengthen our policy when it comes to tourism. Not only in the Tawi-Tawi, but of course, entirety of the one. So, let me now go over some, I prepared this position paper, so maybe let's just give the summary introduction, let's just jump right into the analysis. Yes, since we don't have enough time, and I will have Attorney Canieta discuss most of the LG aspect. Okay?
Limited time.
Limited time, so let me just go in passing na lang. So, Title 2, Article 2, Section 8, deputization of local treasurers and other officials. So, one thing I noticed here is we have this section, it allows for deputization of officials. However, I don't see anything that would somehow specify yung criteria ng pag-deputize. So I think earlier from what we have discussed earlier, there's an issue about personnel, number of personnel sa LGUs. There are some let's say problems with enforcement ng tax. So maybe based on my, let's say, reading sa section, I would recommend that we would add more of a additional language lang. For example, I have written here based on merit ba ang selection process, what are the qualifications, what are the training requirements, and then perhaps the BRO would be able to establish a selection and criteria for selection, and what are those training, necessary training, or let's say mga deployment activities, seminars, etc. that the BRO would be able to let's say implement or maybe introduce during the during the selection process. So that's my comment on Section 8 under Title 2, Article 2. So next, next paragraph, So we have Title 2, Article 2, Section 9. So this is on remittance of taxes by deputized collection officers and withholding agents. So ang na-notice ko dito, we don't have, how do we enforce this? I don't see anything na, for example, we don't have clause for penalties for non-compliance. For example, since ang importante naman kasi when it comes to revenue code is it's always about financial stability, always about the purpose why we impose this tax, why we impose this charge or fees, etc. So it's always about the purpose, government purpose, public welfare, and of course how we enforce those taxes or impositions. So yun lang. So I would recommend, of course, it's subject for the PTA, the members of the parliament, to deliberate on this language. This is just my personal take on all the provisions. I really tried absorbing all of the provisions, pero di makaya. But these are I think, the most crucial sa language. Because what we want to prevent is unnecessary constitutional challenges. Or, kumbaga, when we say constitutional challenges, it would create waste of time, resources, and of course, deliberations again. So we don't want that. So what I want is, when I read the proposed revenue code, it is in the view of brevity and clarity. So that's what I did. So dito, we have here example lang na language, failure to remit collected or withheld regional taxes within a specified period. Kasi I think we have here within 10 days of the month. Parang this is the original text. So perhaps you can add failure to remit collected or withheld regional taxes within a specified period shall result in penalties, including fines and administrative sanctions as determined by the BRO. So I think as to be determined by the BRO, siguro doon na rin papasok sa IRR, implementing rules and regulations. So that's for number 2. So number 3, we have here section 10, support for LGUs and deputized officers. So in number 1, I'm trying to address yung selection process or paano i-deputize yung mga barangay officials, treasurers, etc. So here, how about support? Support for LGUs and deputized officers. This section mentions providing support, pero we don't have it does not specify what types of support and the process, right, for accessing them. Paano ma-access ng mga deputized officers yung support and what type of support? Okay, so this provision, it did not address this concern. So I recommend, ilagay ko dito, support may include financial grants, training programs, technical assistance, and other resources as deemed necessary. And LGUs and deputized officers may apply for support through a formal request process outlined by, again, the BRO. Okay. Or, alternatively, pwede natin siya kumbaga, specify kumbaga, details sa IRR. And I suppose we are working on IRR this time, right? Okay, so that's for number 3. Number 4, okay, na-mention ni attorney and other source person yung I think the other speakers, digitalization of tax collection. Yung concern ko lang dito is, so when you say digitalization, we have several issues kasi when it comes to digitalization. And also, as I go over sa other provisions, there are like QR codes, naka-specify, I forgot which section, which article, pero nakalagay doon, use of QR codes, use of databases, use of this and this and that. Okay. And I think, yun yung issue natin dyan. How do we, kumbaga, saan yung kukunin yung, for example, sino yung tutulong when it comes to digitalization, yung sa training. Kasi I think, sir, you mentioned na there are some officials who are not that techy. Kumbaga, hindi na sila good at computer, not that technically techy, illiterate, kumbaga. So that would also pose an issue. Kasi, diba, we all know for example, not all government offices, but there are some government offices very slow at processing. Like very simple transaction, it will take 1 day. Very simple lang. Or i-compare mo yan siya sa someone na, for example, not younger, not older, but who knows how to use this technology, it will take only 5 minutes. So, here, okay. So the current draft, the current section, it does not show how digitalization will be carried out in practice. Yun yung concern ko dito. So perhaps, again, this will be addressed sa IRR. And I also added a recommendation. I have here, like for example, the BRO shall develop and implement this digital tax collection system within 24, sample na to 24 months. Pero for example, 24 months, 12 months, upon effectivity of this revenue code. And then ensuring interoperability with existing government information system. Because I know we have, for example, sa VIR, everything is automatic now. We have the offline EBIR forms, etc., etc. So, will BORM also adapt such, kumbaga, online systems? Okay. Next would be Title 2 on Section 12 on authority to promulgate rules for implementation and regional taxes. Dito, I have this, I think I highlighted this certain language. Nakalagay kasi dito, to issue rules and regulation from time to time, to clarify and set additional procedures to implement. Yung concern ko dito is the word, the phrase from time to time. Okay, the current language lacks guidance on how frequent these rules should be reviewed, updated, because again, taxes, it's always about economic growth, current condition, ganon, mga factors. So, taxation policies and administration needs to adapt to all these business practices, mga evolution sa technology, economic conditions, and maybe sa ating capacity ng taxpayers natin. So, I have here some recommendation. For example, the MFBM shall review and update the rules and regulations every 3 years, incorporating feedback from stakeholders and ensuring alignment with current practices and technologies. Sample dito is every 3 years. So why every 3 years? This is based on the principle of regulatory capture prevention, theory of economic regulation. Usually kasi business, kasi even in Japan, because I've been a business English teacher doon sa mga Japanese professionals natin for over 8 years. And mostly, when I talk to them and I discuss with them, they always say, we have 3 years. Always 3 years yung review process nila. And consistent kasi every 3 years. So that's why also, I suggest maybe we can have every 3 years. But of course, that is, nakadepende pa rin yan sa BORM, right? It should always reflect kung ano yung situation sa BORM. Let's say, for example, 2 years or let's say 1 year, for example, if that's feasible. Okay, so without such mandated periodic review, of course, we would run to this outdated or misaligned goals ng revenue code natin, which is to promote, let's say, or to collect this source fund for our growth, diba? So, yun yung ko dito, concern ko dito sa Section 12, Title 2, Article 2. Next on imposition of taxes, Section 13, Chapter 2, Title 2. Yung current language kasi dito is real property, and I think na-discuss na to ni Sir Arafat. I will not deep dive on this issue, so I will just move on to the next item. So that would be Title 2, Chapter 2, Section 15 and 16. In here, there are several critical issues that I've noticed. So first, we have taxpayers to pay in 4 equal installments without penalty. So yun yung concern ko, without penalty, it will remove any incentives for early payment. And then another one, we have the phrase, at the discretion of the taxpayer. Okay, so yung at the discretion of the taxpayer, this is very vague. Like you're already giving the taxpayer the discretionary power, the decision making. Diba? You're the taxing authority, then why are you giving the taxpayer the decision making? Yeah, decision making power nimo. So I also included here some discussion, like psychologically. Let's say if you're given an advance discount, I think we are offering a discount for early payment. That's nice, like 20%. How much? 20? 20 ba? Oh yes, 20% discount. Kumbaga, in reality, we are more on procrastination kasi, di ba? So although you have this 20% discount na kumbaga incentive, kumbaga, some taxpayers will not pay on time because wala namang consequence if I will not pay on time, right? Kumbaga, I mean, sa psychology ng taxpayer, even I am also a taxpayer, but naman ako, dili pa deadline, so bisa ko magbayad. Diba? Or for example, last day na siya always. So, April 15, or paghahapon, May 15, quarterly income tax. Alas 12 ko sa kanya. Sabi, diba? So, yun lang. So, to improve section 15, I would recommend that we highlight, or we outline, penalties of any installments. Okay? Of course, to reduce the risk of revenue shortfall. Kasi, I think si Mr. Chair yata ang mention ato na ang collection ng BARM, yes, I think I forgot. So, it was mentioned earlier na very low ang collection ng BARM, right? So, since very low ang collection ng BARM, and then we have here our clause that at the discretion of the taxpayer, it defeats the purpose of this revenue code. So that's my concern. So I hope, ma-deliberate ito siya. We will somehow revisit. Yes, Mr. Chair. Oh yes, kung magbayad ka after 20 years, then it's so I think we need to remove the at the discretion. Or if you want to retain at the discretion, at least we can have the penalty clause here.
Subject to
25%. Subject to 25% penalty. BIR na yan. So next would be Title 2, Chapter 2, Section 19, exemption. We have, minor lang to. I think the section does not specify documentation required to claim exemption under this section. So, for example, the RA number 6667, or Department of Agrarian Reform, maybe we can present or require the taxpayer to present a certification from the DOR, just confirming. So this is just a minor, very minor, minor concern. So let me go to idle land tax. This is very interesting. Idle land, yes. Title 2, Chapter 2, Article 3, Section 22. We have here idle lands. Yung concern ko naman dito is, how do we, what constitute idle lands? Sa Memorandum Circle Number 87, or A70 to 79, they would classify idle land if it's unused for 10 years. Right? So if it's unused 10 years. So dito naman, I just added here, for example, 10 years, 10 consecutive years. But since the officials here knows, the officials know here kung ano yung situation of WARM. So it could be 5 years, or it could be 2 years. It's up to our lawmakers, to the legislative, how they would define idle lands. What I'm trying to point out here, or what I'm trying to emphasize here is, how do we define idle land? Like, what constitutes idle land? Is it 5 years unused, unproductive, or napag-iwanan lang? Because I think Attorney Sani mentioned that there are several lands, a purchase of lands already, tapos hindi na ginagamit. So, what about those properties? So, how would you define idle land? So, yun lang yung ko dito, concern. Next is Title 2, Chapter 2, Article 3, Section 24. Time of payment. So, dito kasi we have two triggering events. We have the execution of the deed and the decedent's death. Okay. for me, it is somehow ambiguous. These two terms are ambiguous, and I will explain later. Tapos, in addition, we have a 60-day period for the payment of taxes on idle lands. Let's say 60 days, it may be too short or too long for our taxpayer, depending on their financial capacity. I mean, they have, for example, especially for inheritance, namatayan si taxpayer, then you will ask, 60 days bayad ka. Okay. So what if they have this 25 hectares na unused idle land? Then you will give the taxpayer, okay, 60 days, 2 months to pay this tax. So I think it's kind of medyo ano na siya, prejudicial as taxpayer. So, and then I have also included here in case of inheritance or the decedent's estate may still be in process of probate. It does not address the complexity. The current draft does not address the complexities. Okay. Next is on the luxury residences. Dito naman, I think na-discuss naman to earlier sa salient points. But I have comments about the different tax calculation. So it states that the luxury unit tax shall be the higher calculation of 3% of construction cost or 375 per square meter of floor area. So, if babasehan na natin dito sa two computation, it could be viewed as, let's say, somehow unfairly maximizing the tax burden. And it will also discourage investment in high-end housing. For example, let's say, na-mention na ang Japan, they are willing to invest in barn. So, how would you attract investors if we have this? So, I think we just need to revisit. Kumbaga, just imagine if you have this tourism already in Guam, and then we have this middle rise, high rise condominiums, and the luxury residences there. Diba? So it will be like Davao already. So, and then section 33, it defines luxury residential unit based on either construction cost exceeding 5 million or floor area over 300 square meters. So if we just rely on this, parang you're given, kumbaga, when you're going to tax the taxpayer already, kumbaga, kailan mo gagamitin yung 5 million and kailan mo gagamitin yung floor area? Okay? So I would recommend, for example, I have this recommendation here. In cases where the classification as a luxury unit is disputed, the taxpayer may request an independent assessment by a mutually agreed upon third-party assessor to determine if the unit meets the criteria outlined in section 33. Yung section 33 nilagay ko lang siya dito, it's just an additional recommendation. The assessment fee shall be borne by the taxpayer. And then, section 33, again, this is just a recommended language. Defining luxury residential unit, for example, the criteria are this: construction cost exceeding 5 million plus floor area over 300 square meters plus located in exclusive neighborhood or premium development. Includes high-end amenities such as schools, gyms, security, etc. and the market value at least 50% higher than the area's average residential unit price. And I think earlier parang 1.6 million ang average area unit price na residence has around 131 residences. Another, still in the luxury residences. Okay. Explain ko lang dito yung rationale why I suggested an independent assessment. This will give the taxpayer an option for a fair resolution of any disputes. Kumbaga, how much yung property, yung amount na dapat papatawan ng tax. So this provision ensures the application of the tax law prevents, let's say, kumbaga more on trust lang between the taxing authority and the taxpayer. Yun yung dito, yung emphasis ko dito. Next, Title 2, Chapter 2, Article 5, Section 34. My question here is, how about the existing residential units? We don't have a provision for existing luxury residential units because from what I understand here, these are only for newly erected residential units, diba? Because they would have to obtain a permit. And then remember, taxation or laws in general are always prospective in nature. We don't apply retroactively. So ang ano pa naman dito, kumbaga for us to harmonize natin yung kumbaga existing residential units and then the purpose of this tax. I would suggest, for example, ito yung language. For luxury residences already erected upon the effectivity of this revenue code, the tax shall be assessed and paid within 6 months from the date of notification by the relevant tax authority. The provisions of this section shall apply prospectively. So you have this already erected residential luxury residential unit. So si taxing authority, assess na niya how much yung value, na meet ba yung criteria under the definition sa section 33 na proposed amendment, then apply it prospectively. Okay. Let me brief. Next is Title 2, Chapter 3, Article 2, Section 38. I think this is more on imposition of tax sa printing and publication of books, cards, posters, leaflets, etc. I think minor lang yung concern ko dito. It's just more on the definition or what constitutes other similar printed matter. So siguro idadagdag lang natin is it's intended for commercial and promotional purposes published in the form. So this is just more on brevity and clarity lang. Same goes with the word capital investment. So parang i-define na natin if the capital investment would include tangible or tangible physical assets or intangible pa kumbaga. So just more on the definition. Title 2, next, number 14, Title 2, Chapter 3, Section 421. With regard to franchise tax, this section is silent on whether franchises operating both within and outside farms need to segregate their receipts based on location. And I'm not really sure if this was addressed earlier, but I think the situs of our revenue code is always on farm. So I think this is no longer, this section is no longer, kumbaga yung comment ko di siya applicable since address kanina na, again, yung situs is the farm. It's located in farm or maybe the transaction is within the farm. Okay, I will just jump maybe to number 17. So number 17, Title 2, Chapter 5, Article 2, Excise tax on plastic bags. Here, this is more of a definition again. We should define single-use non-biodegradable plastic bags and reusable biodegradable plastic bags. And perhaps we could impose different tax rates on those or exemptions. Because when you say single-use non-biodegradable plastic bags, of course, we can impose higher taxes. But for reusable biodegradable plastic bags, you can reuse it. So perhaps you can include that in the exemption. And the next item would be Title 2, Chapter 5, Article 3, Visual Obstruction and Detraction Tax. Question ko dito is, what qualifies as an outdoor advertising sign? And also, I have some discussion here about the impact of this tax in the economy, and as well as the practicality here, because I think we have the regular assessment and collection of this tax every 30 days. So that would entail a significant administrative burden again, given that we have limited number of personnel certain locality or certain LGUs. Another is yung treatment ng existing signs, because we did not address the existing signs upon the effectivity of this revenue code. So again, you just have to revisit here. Maybe we could provide some clauses would reduce the complexity when it comes to visual obstruction and detection. Gusto ko lang i-discuss yung sa economic impact here. Let me just read here. So, imposing a tax of 10 pesos per square foot every 30 days can create substantial financial burden on businesses that rely heavily on outdoor advertising, particularly those small businesses. This recurring cost might discourage the use of outdoor advertising, potentially impacting your ability to attract customers. So if you were like a small business person, for example, tapos you will have this tax, and then you have your capital already this much, and then you have every month you have to pay this. So, So, yun lang. I will leave that to the wisdom of our legislative. Additionally, yung tax structure could lead to an overall reduction in the demand and supply for outdoor advertising spaces. Kasi, for example, if ikaw yung population natin, mas marami yung sa baba. Diba? So, for those here, sa economic status natin, since they occupy the much more, kumbaga mas marami sila eh. So, therefore, hindi na sila mag-avail doon sa mga advertising spaces. So, yung may-ari ng advertising space, hindi din makaka-earn ng income from them. So, it's more of a domino effect. So, we just have to, again, revisit and think of the imposition here. Should we include or should we exclude this tax? So, while tax could be a significant source of revenue, especially in urban areas with heavy use of outdoor advertising, it may also discourage businesses from using this advertising medium. Then we have a flat rate. A flat rate per square foot disproportionately impacts smaller businesses compared to larger corporations. This is what I'm telling you. We have larger corporations and then we have small business people. So 10 pesos per square foot every 30 days is just like very minimal for a large corporation. But it's not minimal to those micro, small, medium enterprises or people. So yun yung especially those who have limited cash flow, this is expensive. Okay. And then, another yung sa naman, sa enforcement. Regular assessment, collection of this tax, every 30 days would create significant administrative burden. Yun yung mention ko kanina. Sa tax authority and the taxpayer. So this is like both mutual. So I think yung burden dito is more on the taxing authority because you'll just have to collect and assess. So the longer assessment period could be more manageable. For example, if you would, let's say, i-retain yung language na 10 per square foot, let's say, instead of 30 days, how about make it annual? So that would reduce administrative costs. At the same time, it will help the business under the micro level. Okay, so I have there the proposed amendments. I will just leave that to the agenda, the legislative to read. And then yung treatment, again, yung mention ko kanina, yung treatment ng existing signs. So, we all know the principle of prospectivity ng taxation or in general ng laws natin. Also here, still in this section, I have noticed we have this Title 3, Section 128, Section 128, Paragraph F. It imposed charges on outdoor advertisement doon sa airport spaces. What I'm trying to say is, there could be a potential conflict or overlap. Since dito sa Title 2 Section 8 ito diba? We are trying to impose tax on advertising signage. And dun sa Title 3 Section 128 Paragraph F, there's also another imposition of let's say signage again. Pero nandun sa airport spaces. So how should we harmonize these two potential conflicting provisions? Section 80, explain ko lang. Section 80 bases the tax on the area per square foot and the duration every 30 days of the advertisement. Whereas Section 128 Paragraph F implies a monthly fee without specifying the basis for the fee calculation. Yung per square foot ba, per advertisement ba, or for flat rate ba, kumbaga. So, perhaps we could revisit that. May potential conflict siya for me. Kasi nga, yung sa isa, public spaces, yung sa isa naman, advertisement within the airport premises. Advertising spaces sa airport. Sige po, yes sir.
Just an example, calculate natin 4 by 10 square, 4 by 10 feet. That is practically 40 square feet. Diba? So, ang cost of printing is 840 pesos. So, yung tax natin, 40 feet times 10 pesos, 400 pesos. Practically,
Every month.
one half of the price of the town.
Yes,
Every month.
yes, every month nakalagay.
This is very huge.
Yes.
But
Micro level, so micro level. So larger corporation, it's very minimal.
Yung sa Lanao, dabong tarpaulin. Oo.
Pero pag siguro,
Display sa Lanao del Sur, puro congratulations. Yung mga nagdadato, nagkuha nga.
yes, exactly. Exactly, attorney. Pero pag siguro pag election season, yayaman yung government. Kasi, di ba, we have to collect. Like, but of course, we have to consider our constituents. Okay na yun, sir. Pwede na makakontinue. Okay. Title 3, Chapter 2, Article 2, Section 122. I think this is more on fees for license and registration of land transportation vehicle. Ang napansin ko lang dito is we don't have walang penalty. Kung nakalagay dun sa table, amount plus penalty. Pero yung question ko is, how would you compute the penalty? Kumbaga dun sa table, I don't have a copy copy ng BTA, that 286, but there's a table there, tapos may amount, and then a word lang na penalty. So maybe you could specify how much and paano and how yung penalty na word doon. And then Title 3, Article 7, fees and charges of labor employment. I'm not sure if this is applicable because I wrote a book, it's more on labor code. Sa Central Beach. So yung sa DOLE naman, we have DOLE regulates legitimate contracting and subcontracting arrangement through Department Order 175, Series of 2017. It includes registration requirements and associated fees. Now, in our bond provision, we propose 100,000 pesos. And I think it's substantial. I understand that, of course, that the reason behind it, the wisdom of these provisions, of course, obvious naman. Pero maybe we could lower the fee. It may seem excessive compared to the national standards. Potentially, it will create a barrier again for those investors and those who would want to engage in contractor business. So, I think it's 50,000. So, yun lang. I-revisit lang to siya ng provision, perhaps. And then, dito tayo sa Article 3, Article 7, on fees and charges on social services and development. Yung concern ko dito is, first, is with the travel clearance certificate for minors. Section 168A. I don't understand why we have to impose this because while I would assume that the reason behind this is of course for the safety and security of our minors who are traveling alone or without a guardian, without a parent. So while the fees appear reasonable considering the yung reason for this, it may be subject to a constitutional challenge. Yung sa right to travel natin, Article 3, Section 6. Okay? Especially for lower income families, 300 and 600, I remember 300 for 1 year, 600 for 2 years. It would be excessive and somehow it would impair the right to travel kasi hindi na-specify how can one obtain the clearance. So if the clearance is very rigid, kasi imagine you'll be giving a clearance for the minor to travel alone. So, ano yung mechanism nito? So how can the taxpayer, how can one obtain a clearance? So kung yung process nito is very rigid, considering the, of course, minor to, then it will again go back. Yes, sir.
This is a regulatory
Yes,
provision.
yes.
In most partners na travel abroad ng bata, may mga strict requirements. And I think yung amount is being imposed, that's a reasonable expense for making sure that the child will arrive this destination. Diba? Kasi hindi naman kasi, dito ang what is being discouraged here actually is the child traveling alone.
Yes.
Diba? Yun yung hindi nakikita natin na perspective dyan. So, iba lang tayo ng perspective. But maybe for you, hindi mo naman dito is para i-reflect natin yung right to travel.
Yes, constitutional provision.
Sa akin naman, you're making sure that if the minor, I think from the perspective of those who wrote this,
Of course. The wisdom ng legislative.
makikita natin dito na what is being discouraged here is the child traveling alone. The minor. Yung sa minor.
Oo. I understand that we have the police power, regulation,
We have to
regulating.
balance
Oo,
it.
balance lang naman. Oo, kasi and anyway, we don't have the kumbaga yung provision, hindi na nakaspecify paano i-obtain yung clearance. So maybe you can, kumbaga doon yung address.
Tingnan yung requirements if it is reasonable yung requirements.
Yes.
Kasi presently, at child travels, kailangan may authority from the DSWD.
Yes.
Kailangan may authority ang parents to authorizing the person to accompany. Yun ang requirements sa DSWD. The process laid down is found in a circular of the Department of Social Services. Yun lang siguro hindi na-reflect yan.
Yes, yun yung
And then, so, I will appreciate that very much kasi yun lang. Ako kung paano rin natin yung, kasi ngayon ang sa amin, yung age limit,
Yes.
yun din ang age ng child. Kasi mayroon kaming youth definition sa farm, iba naman, national government. So I think we have to reconcile that with that provision. In our case, even among Muslims, if at an early age of 15, age of poverty na kinukonsider. 12. So pwede namin i-reflect yun doon.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, attorney.
At now, we appreciate your perspective mo. And I think it will help us also.
Balancing interest lang. Yes, balancing interest lang. Kasi I also don't understand the wisdom from, thank you for explaining. Kasi, why? Bakit may parang it would be a restriction na sa constitutional rights natin. And that's something that we don't want to, again, anyone in the farm, let's say, non-Muslim, for example, would raise this provision. So, it will save us time for defending this provision. So, perhaps you can, again, yung sabi ko kanina, yung caveat ko is, I read this proposed revenue code with the view of brevity and clarity to avoid any constitutional challenges in the future. Okay, yun yung ano. Thank you, sir. Okay. So, same goes with solicitation, donation, and fund drives. Siguro yung concern ko lang dito is, perhaps you could, I don't know if you would agree, but perhaps you could add some exemptions. For example, dun sa charitable talaga na altruistic yung motive talaga ng organization. Perhaps you could add an exemption for them para ma-encourage naman sila. So, yun yung ano ko dito. Encouragement of charitable activities. So, additional language lang dun sa provision. Yung I think dun sa 22 and 23 na discuss kanina under Article 12, Section 9 ng VOL. So, hindi ko na ito siya discuss. And then, same goes with sa BST, na-discuss na din ito, donation, donor's tax, and estate tax. I will just leave this to the legislative to review the position paper. I also happen to have Sharia law before, for 2 years, since I also studied at Mindanao State University for my interest of work. So I have sa Jensen po, extension, Marawi extension. So, we're still connected with the Marawi, pero yung venue lang sa Jensen. Hindi ko na ma-remember yung 2 years, but I'm familiar with of course, the Islamic financial institutions, the transaction, we prohibit riba, the interest. And I have rough draft last night Pero hindi ko na ma-remember, that was 8 years ago or 9 years ago. But I have some rough draft na hindi ko na na-include dito sa position paper ko. But there's a situation, for example, how can you siguro itagdag lang natin sa provision, clarity lang as to how would this transaction qualify as a Sharia compliant. Yun lang siguro yung itagdag. And anyway, na-discuss naman kanina ni Ma'am, ni attorney, na very clear naman yung ano dito na if it's Islamic transaction, then this would fall under this, and then ito yung matatax. Sa conventional naman na transaction, this will be. So siguro clarity lang on those terms sa language. I think that would be all. Thank you.
Continue tayo mo. Magkasa naman. Sige.
Thank you. We appreciate very much the proposals that given. And I would like to advise the President, perhaps our resource did not mention that idle land tax are defined already. Idle land is identified in both Presidential Decree, Section 43 of Presidential Decree 464, which is an idle land for agriculture and vacant land for urban centers. And the definition of idle land, if I recall, if my memory serves me right, is if one half of an agricultural area devolved for agriculture, grazing, all this, one half of it that utilized, then it can be considered as idle land. In the case of the urban centers, as is also reflected under Republic Act 7160, pareho rin ang definition doon sa agricultural, but doon sa urban centers, on average of 2,000 square meters. If one half of that is not utilized, then it can be considered as vacant land, provided that if it is in a subdivision, if the ownership of the property is already transferred to an individual person. So I hope our Secretariat had already put those definitions of the Presidential Decree 464, Section 43, and the definition of idle land and vacant land under Republic Act 7160. I think it was in Section 200. Kasi binasa ko rin na ito kasi parang preparation to our deliberation. Section 236 of Republic Act 7160.